All right, welcome to another um, conversation and expanding the conversation. I think today we're gonna try to tackle something that I'm a little bit passionate about. I probably don't have enough information um, to call myself an expert, but there's lots of time left. But we want to talk a little bit about health and fitness and what that means. And I think one of the things we've tried to focus on, Kofi, is as we think in the context of Guyana and our Guyanese people
Right.
and how we approach this idea of health and fitness. And so I think we want to cover a couple of things of what's considered good health. What sort of some of our beliefs or societal beliefs around health and fitness. I think particularly as we get older, how we view sort of aging, right? And the fact that, as you get older, you probably just supposed to let a few things go and some things are not supposed to work as well. I'm a big believer in challenging some of those because especially, as I just turned 40 last year, so sort of my midlife as I think about that. And then I think we'll try to talk a little bit about a couple of basic things I think it's helpful for all of us to do as we sort of chart our path towards being a healthier version of ourselves.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I can certainly start from the perspective of um, what I think health and fitness means, or good health. And again, I think oftentimes there's a baseline medical definition of what good health is. But there's an individual definition. And for me, my individual definition is more tied to how do I want to live my life? What are the things that I want to do um, with myself, with other people, with my kids? What's the level of activity I wanna have, right? And so when I think about what health means to me is that my body's working well. I'm eating the things I'm supposed to eat in the right quantities to a greater degree, not 100%, because there's always lots of options out there to have a cheat day or a cheat week or a cheat month. So my approach to being as like I want to wake up every day with a certain level of energy. I want to live the entire day with a certain level of energy. And I want it to be an active life. And I'm talking about, I'm 40 now. If I live to the age of 80, the things that I do today, I want to be able to do all of them at 80, right? And so that requires some amount of discipline and thinking about what I want to do and little by little chipping away
Right.
um, at the things that matter. So that's sort of how I view what my health should look like. I mean, there are obviously but a lot more details below that.
Right.
But that's sort of how when I wake up and I live the day, I should go to bed thinking that
Right.
I'm healthy, right? And so I'll let you say what being healthy means to you, Kofi.
Yeah. Hey guys. Yeah, indeed. Welcome to expanding the conversation here, Rich and Kofi. I think this is important. A couple of thoughts. One, I think of when we were young, right? Kids, we run around. Sometimes we eat whatever we want. But the big thing about that sort of thing was just the energy. You look at any young person, and one of the first things that some people say is, "I wish I had the energy that those kids have." And so there's something there that is you just recognize that with that kind of energy, there are things you can accomplish, right? They're just things you can do. Um, from you think about an engineering system, right, or just how the world works. You got to put energy into things to get work done, right? To get stuff out. And so when you look at that sort of exuberance, right, in children, you people tend to appreciate that because you know you can do things with that energy. You can get work done, right, with that useful work done as you put that kind of energy into things. I think one of the big challenge, and it's not that we're not talking about child health because I think that's a good topic, but particularly as we grow older, I think a number of people tend to take the position that, you're going to lose that energy and, you're not going to be as healthy anymore as you were at 15. But I think, and we may have said this in some previous episodes, I think there is a way to keep that exuberance level going, right? In order to generate the same kind of energy, or at least similar levels of energy, to be able to get things done even as you become older. You talk about hitting 40. So it's a fact that our bodies are changing, right? Our bodies are getting older, things are slowing down, right? Our metabolism may not be as high as it used to be when we were at 21 or 25. But it isn't to say, however, that we can't feel like we're 25 and feel like we're 21, right? And we don't have to give in to this notion that, yeah, we're older and just this is the life, right? And just let it go. And I think that's part of where this starts, right? Is this mental recognition that you can be very healthy all the way into your 40s and your 50s and beyond, right? And so then the question becomes, what are you supposed to do, and what are you supposed to be looking for, right, as we get older and older, in order to maintain that level of health? And so I think you touched on a couple of things. I think exercise. What's the right level of exercise for all of us? We know that exercise helps to release, the energy. One of the things I do, Richard, which is I think a lot of people might find counterintuitive. The times if I feel like down, right, and just out and low on energy, rather than go to sleep, I go for a run, right? I get up and I go and run a mile, and there's nothing to me, better than, other than, some people drink coffee, some people do other things because maybe they feel like they don't have the time. But a good run for me will get my energy level and focus level back up to where it needs to be. That allows me to sit back down, right, and really just kind of get work done again. And so I think that's certainly one way of boosting your energy. So exercise, we know that for a fact, right? You can get a minimum of 30 minutes of exercise a day, whether that is focused exercise or exercise that is sort of built into your routine. When I was a kid, we used to fetch buckets of water, and trek through the street and go to the neighborhood to a pump station and fill up a cart and push it, right? So you were getting your exercise in natural ways, but as you get older and, you get your desk job and you just kind of sit back, right? You just kind of
But you've
slouching
made
on
it in life.
Exactly, right. So you might have to find an opportunity to go out there. And even if it's just a little bit of walking, right, you'd be amazed at what that could do for getting that energy level up. And so that's what we're saying. So with that energy level comes the potential again for real high productivity. And I think the productivity comes not only from the fact that you feel like you've got energy, but really the mental sort of empowerment that you get, right, from going out and just exercising and just boosting your energy. So that's what I'd say. I think as we grow, it becomes even more important for us to think about how we can maintain a certain level of energy, right, which I think affects our overall happiness and productivity level as individuals.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think one of the things that you talked a little bit about, we sort of live with the belief that as we get older, things slow down, and that's just how it is.
Right.
And I remember growing up, and you look around, and not to say that it's everybody, but we have a fair amount of people that are okay with having a little beer belly as life, or as they say in the US, a dad bod, right?
Right.
And I was just like, maybe that's normal, right? When I get to that age, that's sort of what maybe you were supposed to look like. But I think that's not true.
Wait, I'm not supposed to have a big belly at 40? Is that what you're saying?
You could. And in some places, that's an indication of having access to a lot of resources. So there are different signaling to what you look like physically. But I think growing up with the idea that as you get older, some things are just natural as it pertains to your health, and your health is sort of fades as you get older, I think is something that's worth challenging. I mean, I certainly have committed myself to doing that. But I think there is sort of, and this is what I've observed throughout many realms of life, is that there are little steps that you can take on a consistent basis that gets you to a great result, much better than the one that you've resigned to just being, right?
Right.
But I think you've got to take those steps, and you've got to do it consistently. And I think when you think about where you are health wise, even if you're young, right? Because one of the things that helps as you get older is having good practices and good habits, right? Because habits are sort of instinctive. You don't have to think about executing a habit. It's just a habit, right? It's habitual, right? You do it just because
habit's a bad habit.
and that's the thing, right? If it is a bad habit, then you are going to do it. And so,
exactly,
you can start making these little decisions and little steps and do it consistently. And I think you have the ability to enhance the quality of your health, right?
Yeah.
But we know this, right? And the question is, people are probably going to ask, so why should I worry about being healthier? I feel fine. I'm okay. I mean, I'm going to live. I'm going to die. Why not enjoy myself?
It's like a waste of time. Yeah, I'm not going to run to the gym and become a gym.
Yeah. What would you say to those people, Kofi?
Well, I mean, I think I already said. I think one of the things I said before is I find that in terms of productivity, I find exercise gets my productivity up, right? And so I think that's one benefit. I think there's also sort of a transformative power that comes with trying to set yourself some healthy lifestyle goals. And I mean, we know for a fact that healthier lifestyles, on average, lead to longer life. So time spent with your children and time to observe and do certain things. And it isn't to say that if you live a certain way that you're not going to be able to do that, but just in general. But I think from a discipline perspective, I think it translates into so many other areas of our lives, right? In certain religious practices, for example, they have fasting. One of the things I've always learned, not as a health practice, but one of the things that I clearly remember about fasting is this idea that we're able to deny ourselves certain things. And sometimes you think you need things, but you don't, right? And so it's kind of what the lesson of fasting teaches, right? It's that we have dominion and control over our bodies. And that if we allow our bodies, right, and its desires just to control the decisions that we make, then we're not really living for the things that we truly want to accomplish, right? We're living off of the things that, our body just kind of wants. And there's a way to discipline your body. And that's what I'm trying to get at. There is a way to take charge when, people say mind over body in this case. And I think that's partly or largely what a healthy lifestyle is about. It's about saying, I'm going to set myself these goals and I want to achieve these things. And that's what my mind wants. And I'm not going to let my body distract me from that, right? If at anything, I'm going to whip my body into shape, right? And teach my body that it needs to obey, right, the will that I am sort of, establishing over it. And I think it's that sort of mental transformative process, right, that allows you to overcome these things. And as you start to do that with your own life and your own body, and you watch the transformation every day in the mirror or wherever, and you're thinking about it, and you just feel better, I think it ultimately begins to translate into these other areas of your life where you start to take control of your life. So I think it's really about being in control of your life and of your destiny, right? One sort of step at a time, right? As we go forward. So I think that's, to me, one of the biggest things about it. I remember when I started a CrossFit program. Prior to that, I wasn't doing much running. I was, just doing regular exercise, right? I do my push-ups and come and go. But it wasn't until I actually got into that program that I realized that I was capable of so much more. And the impact of that, right, on me, even as an older person, because I was doing this in my 30s, right? Not in my 20s, right? I started CrossFit in my 30s, and I started doing handstands in my 30s and pull-ups and burpees, right? And running miles in my 30s. And I'm not gonna sit here and say I'm the most healthy or athletic person, but compared to where I used to be, there was a significant improvement for me using my own metric. And I think that's what everybody's got to do, right? You've got to use your own metric, not somebody else's metric. Okay. And I remember just being able to look at that effect and that experience and say to myself, wow, there's so much more that I can actually do if I were to just discipline myself, right? Discipline my body. It translated into productivity in other areas, of my life. And I think that to me has been one of sort of the biggest benefits. That even now, when I don't find the time to exercise, when I don't do the things that I sort of want to do, and even when I'm doing them, if I'm running a mile and I'm going up a hill, I'm talking to myself and I'm cheering myself on, like, no, you could do this, man, because remember when you started, you couldn't do it. You could do this. And it's a way of just, as we say, psyching yourself up and pushing yourself to that end. And think about how many things in life, right? How many challenges in life we're going to face where we need that, right? Where we need that don't quit attitude. And I think that's what being healthy is about. It's like, I'm not going to quit. I'm not going to give up. I'm going to do what I have to do. I'm going to develop the right attitudes. And you struggle and you suffer, like you said. It's more about the journey than as when we have these conversations, saying it's not really about the destination. It's about the journey, right? It's about learning along the path. It's not about being perfect. So I think, to me, Rich, that's sort of one of the biggest things. It's this ability to take charge, to establish discipline over my own life and the things that I want to accomplish, and to push myself harder and harder towards those things, and really to develop the mentality that I'm not going to quit. I'm not going to give up. I'm going to keep trying. And even when I fall down, even when I stumble, right, I'm going to get right back up and put myself back in there. I mean, this is what you see even like in the athletic fields. You see people fall down. It's not about getting to the finish line first. People limp sometimes to that finish line. And I think that's what being healthy, at least from my perspective, is about.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think one of the things, as you were talking there, I remember doing this this goal setting thing earlier in the year, and one of the lines I like is that they say that a win in one area of your life is a win in every area of your life.
Yeah.
In the sense that if you can improve your physical health, your emotional health will get better, right? Your relationships could potentially get better. And so there's this ripple effect. One of the things that I always like to think about,
and your relationships get better. If I might throw that in there, I didn't mean to cut you, but continue.
Yeah, but no, and so you're right. One of the things that I think I've learned and sort of think a lot more now at this stage of my life is how do the things that I do impact the people around me, right? And so if you're, for example, somebody that's not in the greatest of health, what does that mean for the onlookers, right? What does that mean for your kids? What does that mean for your significant other? What does that mean for if you're a teacher in a classroom, right? You show up differently. You teach differently.
Mm-hmm.
You wake up differently, spending time with your kids. You come home differently, spending time with your kids. And so there's that ripple effect of when you take charge of this one element of your life, then you have the ability to enhance other elements of your life. One of the things, though, that I think we should caution people, and I think I know we do this a lot back home, is the idea that if I look a certain way, then I must be healthy, right? So, as
True.
we would call a fine man or a fine girl, right?
Right.
But somebody that's slim, right? They look perfectly fine, or even if they're somewhere in between. I think the idea is that if you look a certain way, then you're healthy, and I think that's not true either. One of the things that we all need to do to sort of have a baseline starting point of whether we are healthy or not healthy is making sure that we go get a checkup. And
Absolutely.
it's funny, right? Because I know that we have complaints about our medical system in Guyana, but it's still free, right? It's still universal health care. And I think we have to sometimes figure out, and I know I spoke to a doctor one time that worked at the community health centers, right? And so, I mean, we've got sort of, in most communities, there's a health center, and I think they do checkups. And don't quote me on this, but I think most of them have the ability to do at least a basic checkup, right? Even if it's just maybe a blood pressure and whatever else test that you can go do it. Maybe you can, get an initial screening of some sort. But I think you have to get a checkup to know whether or not. And so one of the things I remember listening to a talk, and they said the absence of disease is not health, right? So not because you're not sick means that you're healthy. You're like, oh, I'm fine. I don't get sick, I don't get a cold or anything, so I'm healthy. Not to say that you aren't healthy, but I think you always need to have that confirmation, because
a good way
chances
to
are you're 90% healthy, but that 10% could deteriorate significantly unless you know, and then you can address it, and then you can be healthy.
Yeah. I think a good way to state it is not an assurance of healthy, right? It certainly is an indication that, of course, if you aren't getting sick and you generally have a good immune system and so forth, you'll be regarded as a healthy person. But go the extra mile and get a checkup, right? To confirm, because I think it's sort of interesting with, look, I'll illustrate this with a story. In 2012, I was playing volleyball I was an active volleyball player, as part of a team at work, and I was also playing soccer. Very active.
I didn't know that you were a good volleyball player.
Well, I don't know if I was
Maybe
good.
you didn't say you were good.
I was doing it for fun. I mean, this was all exercise. This was the whole point of running and playing football, and and involved in these volleyball games and all this sort of stuff. Remember 2012? It was May 2012. I finished grad school, year out. I just had a job for about a year. Still very active, early 30s, and then I'm driving to Tampa, and I just keep feeling like this little pain in my side. And I'm thinking, sometimes I'm thinking it's the seatbelt. Sometimes your seatbelt comes across and it's kind of pinching you. But this one was strange. This one felt like it was on the inside. And, and I kept telling my friend and I kept telling my wife, I said, I don't know, I just don't like it. And they're like, you probably just need to go to the bathroom and be like perfectly healthy, Because like I said, I'm running and jumping and doing all this stuff, and I self-diagnosed. I'm like, guys, this doesn't really feel like my gut system. Like I've had gas before, I know what it feels like. And so I self-diagnosed, right? I pick up my phone and I check and I was like, yeah, I think I've got appendicitis. And I drove up to the emergency room and the guy goes, yeah, you've got appendicitis. And not when he says that you have appendicitis, is that it's completely inflamed, right? And I was like, yesterday, I was playing volleyball and football, and I didn't feel a thing, right? And I didn't feel. I mean, this is sort of an extreme example, but it's one of those things where, the end of the story is I actually went into the hospital and I was taken into surgery like within 24 hours. I was hospitalized for 6 days. Had it removed. They had to cut my appendix, the entire thing out was removed. And it was sort of, it was sort of miraculous in some ways, right? Because I think these guys we're going to go in here and do like what they call, I think, just and two snips. I can't remember the name of it. But basically 2 snips right below the stomach, get in there, and they end up cutting me open. I end up having a C-section, right? Because it was worse than they thought, much worse than they thought. And they went in there and took out what they needed to take out. And in 6 days, I was out the hospital. But I left there thinking to myself, my whole idea of being healthy just changed completely, right? And this is an extreme example because sometimes we don't know when these things will happen. God forbid that this happens to anybody. But the point I'm making is that a good checkup, a good annual checkup, right, and seeing a doctor, primary care in this sense, rather than waiting until you're sick to go to the doctor, is actually a good thing because it can detect things like this, right? It could detect other things that could be creeping up that may not at the moment be manifesting and showing itself, right, to affect your health. And so it's really good to have these periodic checks to just ensure, just like you would do with your car, man. You know, you would take your car and get the oil changed and you would clean it out and, you know, you would wash the outside down. And you'll change the oil, as I said, and all these kinds of things. So it was really an eye opener for me to realize that, hey, you know, this is really important. That, as you said, the appearance of health isn't always the assurance that you're healthy. And I know that when it comes to health, a lot of things do happen. And I don't know that we have control over all of those things. But, you know, I think it has been shown statistically that we can catch some of these things before they actually become problematic, which then guarantees that you can continue to live a healthy life, spend time with your family and children and so on. So, yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I think maybe we can talk a little bit about eating. This is, right. That's a key component to being healthy. And I'm not a dietitian or a nutritionist. I can mostly share a little bit about how I think about it and I've had some conversations with people that study a little bit more and a little bit more involved in it. But the way I think about health, one, I think the same concept of, you know, there's an ideal way maybe to eat and what you eat. But for me, it's always how I'm moving a little bit closer in the direction of what's good, right? So the way I think about eating healthy is if I'm eating a certain amount of fruits and vegetables every day, that's a starting point, right? If I'm eating a lot less processed food. So one of the things I think about when I eat, I want to be able to like look at my food and know the source of it, right? If I look at it and I can't tell where this thing came from, what did it originate from, or what's in it, I probably don't want to eat it, or it's probably not healthy. I think there's also an additional part where I think, and this is sort of key, is that a lot of times we tend to sort of overcook, I think, our vegetables. And how do we do that less? And I think that requires, especially in our environment where we're so accustomed to eating certain foods, and I think that requires a little bit of a shift from the way we do things, right? So when we eat some curry, we like some rice with it or some roti, and that's just how the meal goes, right? With some hot pepper sauce, and that's a solid meal. And again, there's nothing wrong with it. I think it depends on how much you eat and how often you eat it.
Who you are.
Yeah. But let's say you were to maybe switch out the rice occasionally to maybe, you know, add some sweet potatoes or some eddos, right? Some boiled and fried sweet potatoes and eddos. And maybe add a little bit of bhaji or spinach on the side, just a little sauteed. And, you know, you still get the flavors, and I think it takes some time to get used to it. You can still eat your curry and rice, right? But I think those like I said, the little steps that you can take will get you a little bit closer. And so, like I said, when I think about my eating and what I consider healthy is having a good amount of fruits and vegetables every day. You know, having some good carbs in there. So like, you know, plantains and sweet potatoes are my favorite. And, you know, you obviously have to drink water. That's
Right. I was
a
gonna
key
say that
element of
line
it. And I
for
think as we live in our more regulated environment, sometimes
yeah.
we tend to overlook drinking enough water.
Yeah.
But those are sort of like some basic elements. I mean, there's some add-on things now that I'm learning about in terms of, you know, supplements, whether I need a vitamin D supplement or B12 or, you know, some zinc or magnesium and all that stuff. But I think we can start very basic. Most of us can start very basic and just get a little bit healthier. And so I think eating is a key component, right? One of the things I also realize is that as I get a little bit better, I can acquire a little bit more information, talk to a few more people, and keep refining it, right? So I'm moving closer and closer because, you know, if you're walking on the road and you get a mile, okay, how much further am I going to go? You know, what do I need to do? Do I need some directions? And you might ask somebody for some directions. And I think that's very much sort of the same approach that I've taken to be healthier as I get older.
I mean, I think we'll probably say this in closing, and maybe pick this up in part two on this because I also think this is one of those big topics too. Just on the issue of food, there are two things I add to what you said because you said a lot of great things there, Rich. One, diet should match who you are, the individual, and I think it should go hand in hand with um, maybe a conversation with your primary care doctor or dietitian if you have access to one, but even a primary care doctor, because depending on who you are, which your age, and particularly if you have any pre-existing conditions, I'd imagine that a particular diet might be more suited for you than say for somebody else, folks with things like diabetes or predisposition to diabetes, folks with high blood pressure, right, and so forth, may want to consider things like, how much salt and so on they take in and so forth. Even across those groups also with sort of pre-existing conditions, I think even things like refined foods, right? We like our bread, and sometimes very refined flour or food in a can, things that are highly processed, right, can be a problem. Right? Again, we're not doctors, we're not giving any medical advice, but I think this is just generally available information that highly processed foods can be a challenge. And I think this is one of the benefits we have, Guy. And I did this video once, I think I put on Facebook, which showed that,
Yeah.
my parents, I mean, they basically pick from the tree and it goes straight into the pot, right? People talk about from market to table. I mean, there's a garden to mouth, right? It's like you what you eat it. I don't think it gets any better than that. But the point is, it depends on who you are. You've got to have a diet that matches who you are. You've got to have a diet that matches any pre-existing conditions or anything like that you have. You certainly did mention the fact that things like water is really important. The thing I'd say in the end here, Richard, is that I think a lot of people, we talked a little bit about exercise, and a lot of people sometimes, they think if they have to lose weight or they have to get healthy, the first thing everybody is telling them is that, hey, you got to go out there and exercise and sweat all day and just, kill yourself.
Mm.
And that, what I've found over time is, the biggest effect on even weight control is actually dieting, right? And it doesn't have to
Yeah.
be some sort of extreme diet, right? But shifting around a couple of things that you talked about, a little bit more complex carbs, than say a little bit more processed carbs, like give up a little bit of bread for maybe some sweet potatoes or even some boiled and fried plantains, right? Which tends to keep you during the day, right? Because it's so energy dense, right? As opposed to some of the more refined food that just doesn't have the energy level to keep you going, or is a big drag on your digestive system. So I find that that is diet, right, and having the right diet is more impactful in terms of things like weight loss and so forth. And that's just, again, that's what I've seen my experience, not from a medical perspective or anything. And so the exercise I find is like a conditioning, right, to help really maximize the things that you're putting in your body, right? And I find that, especially as you get older, I find as you get older, it's a lot more about what you eat than your exercise, even though exercise is still very, very important. Probably end there. So extend the
Yeah.
conversation.
Yeah. I agree with you. All right. We'll extend the conversation.